there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, this is what started it all off. This is the Photoplay Falling Leaves cover plate die. Now, the reason why I don't have many of these dies on hand is because they are super expensive. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a justified expense for the companies. However, it just means that usually these are out of my price range. But for whatever reason, this one here is less than $10 US. So I purchased this one on scrapbook.com, and when I saw it, I thought, yep, that's definitely one. I have a fair few ideas, and I would like to share them with you today of all these things that we can do with a cover plate die. Now, this is not the only things you can do. By no means, but I really didn't want to make a super long video, so I just included, I think there's probably 4 or 5 cards that I make today, just to give you some ideas, and I'm happy to keep going and give more ideas for this cover plate because there are endless options. So a few of them I'm going to start with, and we are going to move through these a little bit quicker than I might otherwise move through cards because, as I said, I'm showing you a fair few options. A couple of the first ones are going to end up not using sort of very different techniques, but a similar look in the end, just in case you have one or the other that you prefer. So to start off with, I am using some abandoned coral, some spiced marmalade and mustard seed distress oxide inks. Now I am choosing to do this on some Tim Holtz watercolor paper because the covering on the watercolor paper, it makes it super easy to blend inks, which is why I love it very much. Now another technique here, this is the chipped sapphire and wilted violet distress oxides, and you can put the inks directly onto your non-stick mat. This mat that I use is actually the replacement mat for the glass media mat, the Tim Holtz one. I don't own the glass media mat and I don't need it at all, but I love the size of this little replacement mat. It is a very good price point and it has the silicone backing, which means that it doesn't move anywhere on my craft space, and it's really small but the perfect size that I'm able to kind of pop it away and it not take up a whole lot of space in my small crafting area. So I have just added a little bit of water to the inks that I smushed down on the non-stick sheet, and then I used a piece of watercolor paper to dip it in. Then I'm going to dry what I got and dip it in again to get a really kind of splattery and multicolored background. I chose just to use 2 colors, but you can go to town and use 2, 3, 4, 5 colors. Any inks, that are water reactive are going to work perfect. I wanted a little bit more blue, so I put down a little bit more of the chipped sapphire and kind of dipped it in. And then once you are happy with your results, then you are good to go with these backgrounds. It is handy to dry in between some of the layers, and that means it will kind of, instead of blending all together, it will layer upon each other. So that makes those gorgeous little spots and dots and things. Now here is the cover plate all cut out. I just cut this out in some regular cardstock that I use for all of my cards, and I could have added some double-sided adhesive sheets to the back of this paper before I die cut that out, but because I was doing a lot of cards for this video, I didn't want to use up that much double-sided adhesive sheets. That would have been a few, so my way that I prefer to go then is to use some liquid adhesive. I just pop some out on that little non-stick sheet. I use a makeup sponge to sponge it over the back, turn it around to give it lots of good pressure, and this is the look that we get for the first one. Now I'm not only going to do the backgrounds, but I'm going to finish off all of these cards for you just so that you can see what I might do with them. Now I am very boring with my stamp sets. I use them time and time again. I want to get good value for money. So I know that you guys have seen this so many times. This is a firm favorite of mine. I love this stamp set. This is the Made For You stamp set from Woodware. I am stamping it out in some VersaFine Onyx Black ink onto some Lawn Fawn vellum, and that's important because the Lawn Fawn vellum is able to be heat embossed upon. Some vellums we're just going to curl right up because obviously they are plastic and you are adding heat to them, but I love the Lawn Fawn one because it is able to withstand that heat when you are heat embossing on it. Then I'm going to use my paper trimmer and just trim this out into a nice little strip. For the first couple of ideas that I'm doing here with the cover plate, these are pretty much the obvious ideas and really simple, but simple is good and it still looks gorgeous. And when people receive these cards, they still love them. So it's really important to remember that simple is good too. So the first couple here I'm going to show you are kind of based around that idea. I used a little bit of double-sided tape to stick the vellum around the back of this card here, just to add a little bit more to it. I am going to add a few little gems and things. I've chosen to go with the oranges and the yellows, just the same colors, and I have links to everything that is still available will be down in my description box below this video. Sometimes, depending on which device you are looking at and watching this video on, you might have to press the little grey arrow that's pointing downwards at the bottom right hand side of your screen, and that will kind of show you more and release all of those links and everything in case you would like to check something out. Included are all these gems and the cover plate and any of the inks and things that I'm using. The non-stick sheet I will link just as much as I can. If it's not down there, then it's probably not available anymore. But the good news is that I'm sure if you have a look around, you'll be able to find some great things in your stash to make some of these looks as well. Now, to finish this card off, I had a little bit of an idea that I wanted to do. So I have these circles here. This is the Spellbinders rings around the circle dies. These are gorgeous. I purchased these recently for a little bit extra to add on top of like plain vellum circles and things. Then I have these curly greetings stamp set. Again, you guys have seen this one a lot, but good value, and I use them a lot. So I'm stamping it out in the black ink again. And the reason why I have the vellum is because the background of this cover plate and the inking that I have done is quite intense. It's quite busy to the eye, and then I'm adding a kind of busy pattern on top with the circle and the little circles around the circle. So to kind of combat that and just calm it down a little bit, I'm adding this little piece of vellum, and that kind of cuts out some of the noise, some of the color from behind just the little rings around the circle. So that was the plan with adding the vellum. I am adding a little bit of foam tape, and this will give it a bit of dimension. But what I wanted to do to give this card a little bit of sparkle and something a little bit different is I got out some of the purple gems. These are kind of a dark purple blue, and I am going to add these inside each one of those little rings around the circle. That way it's going to really frame the sentiment and make sure that our eyes aren't drawn in too much from the background. So I'm going to use some of the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish. That's what's inside my little glue bottle there. I put it inside the glue bottle myself. I just buy it in bottles, and that is the most kind of cost-effective way for me to purchase this glue. And then I am going to use a little wax pen. These are very cheap and cheerful, but anything is going to work, even a stick with some blue tack on the end, and just pop those on top of the glue. I like to use this glue because I know that those gems are not going to move anywhere at all once they are nice and dry, and that gives it that perfect little bit of shine. Now, coming back to these colors of the Abandoned Coral, Spice Marmalade, and Mustard Seed, I am going to, just because I kind of liked this combination, I'm going to reuse it. But this time, all I need is a little square up the top. Now, this is a really fun technique. In fact, I did a video on this one, and I kind of call it a faux glass tile. We create a really big, gorgeous tile, a whole lot of shine, a whole lot of dimension, and it looks amazing on the front of a card. So I'm just creating a little kind of ombre look here, and then once I thought I had it kind of big enough and I closed up my inks, I realized I needed just a little bit bigger space. So I'm just going to come back in with the same ones and just extend it out a little bit more for what I need. Then I am going to bring in the cover plate. Now this is one that I have die cut, and I just need a small area of this one. So I'm not going to waste those scraps that I cut off. I definitely will keep those because you just never know about the projects in the future. I am just holding the template kind of on top of my piece of paper here. I just need a rough kind of cut just so that I don't glue the whole thing to begin with, but I'm going to do exactly the same technique as I did before by putting some of the liquid glue down on my non-stick sheet and then dabbing on the glue and popping this down onto my ink blended piece that we have created. Now for this one, we are going to create a well to fill up with some gorgeous embossing powder. Now, you don't have to use embossing powder for this technique. Glossy Accents works just as well. Or any other product that kind of dries like that, nice and shiny and clear, is going to work, and you can experiment with what you have in your stash. I have cut out some little frames here, some square frames. I have 4 of them. I'm using some liquid glue around the outside of each of the frame, choosing the piece from my project that I want to frame, and then I'm going to pop the first one down. This one is really going to become a guide for me, so I pop it down with the liquid glue, then I'm going to hold an acrylic block on it for a second or two to make sure that it is starting to dry, and then I will cut out the shape, making sure I kind of angle my scissors to get underneath the project almost a little bit, so that I know there is not going to be any colour hanging out of the side as well. Now don't get me wrong, this project can definitely be done with any die cuts, any stamping or anything at all. I have shown in my previous video how I did this with stamping, so that is going to work perfect too. But I'm just showing you that even when you purchase a cover plate, it doesn't have to be used as an entire cover plate. There are lots of fabulous options like creating shaker cards, and I mean the options are endless. So as I said, this is not the limited to selection for the cover plate. It's just a few ideas to get you started. So then once I have glued on all 4 of those frames, I have some ultra thick embossing powder here. This is the clear one, and I'm going to pour this on top of my project. You could definitely just use regular embossing powder in the clear. That is going to work perfectly fine too. It's just that the ultra thick embossing powder is slightly chunkier, and I have a whole massive tub of this to use up. If you are someone who's been crafting for a little while, this was popular a fair few years back now, and so I guess lots of us, if you have that in your cupboard, then you are keen to kind of use it up at every opportunity. So I'm going to use the chunkier one, but as I said, both are going to work perfectly fine. I am going to hold the heat gun on the bottom, because if I came at it from the top, all of the embossing powder is going to blow away, and because it is so thick, the layer that we've put on, there's no point using like Versamark or something to sticky it down. That would take me a long time to get enough layers, so it's just nice and easy to kind of pour it in and melt it that way. And from the bottom, it does take a minute. As you can see, I've definitely fast forwarded this up, but it does go pretty quickly. And then look at this gorgeous big tile that we have created. To finish off this card, I'm going to use the same made for you stamp set, and I'm just going to use the tile to go straight in the middle of my card. This is the focal point. I'm using some double-sided tape, but you can use anything to adhere this down. Now I am going to stamp the happy birthday sentiment for this one as well, mainly because I've used some really bright and cheerful colours. You can obviously change this up, change the background. It doesn't have to be the leaves cover plate, and you can change the colours that you choose to do it upon. You could do it upon coloured cardstock as well. You don't have to ink blend your own, and then that way you are able to kind of change it up to match the occasion that you are going to use it for. So as I said, this was a happy birthday one, so bright and cheerful was good for me. And look at that beautiful shine on our big tile there in the center. Then moving on to the next technique with this cover plate, and this is one of my favorite ones. We are going to do some die cut inlay, but I will show you how I cheat. So first of all, I have some pieces of cardstock here. I've chosen a purple, a grey and a yellow, and I also have a white piece as well. Once you have run this through your die cutting machine, then I want to keep all of the pieces in place. So I'm using some low-tack tape. This is the 4-inch wide mint tape, and this is perfect. I have purchased a lot of low-tack tapes and done a lot of research, and I came back to the mint tape time and time again. Perfect amount of tackiness and works really well, and it comes in a 1-inch roll and a 4-inch roll, which is the 4-inch one is really good for doing things like this. I want to make sure that all of the pieces are kind of stuck down onto that low-tack tape on the back when I replace the die, so pretty much everything came out here. And then I'm going to repeat that process for all of the pieces of coloured cardstock. And then I have some double-sided adhesive sheets here. This is the Stick It adhesive, and for the white one I am going to pop this down. Now I'm using the Stick It adhesive because these sheets are really thin and perfect for die cutting. If I were not going to die cut this, I prefer to use the scrapbook.com adhesive sheets, but they are thicker and they're very sticky. This Stick It sheets are very sticky too, but they are definitely much easier to die cut. So I've popped the sheet on and then given it a really good rub with my hand to make sure it is all adhered, and it's going to stick down to my little panel there. And then take off the release paper. I have a white outline cut here, so just the exact cover plate, and I'm just going to use the outline of this one. So I'm making sure that all of the other pieces stay behind on that mint tape, and I can use these for a whole nother project. Yes, technically this project does make 4 cards, but I'm going to show you a cheats way that I do this, because for a whole cover plate like this, it can be pretty time consuming to do the entire thing in die cut inlay. So at the moment, all of that adhesive is all kind of sticky upwards. So I have all of those gaps that I need to fill in. So I'm going to take off all of the outside cover plates now, save these, put them aside, and then this is where it is going to make it nice and easy to pick off the pieces and pop them in. It's basically like popping in puzzle pieces. It's going to fit perfectly, and they sit in really nicely because the adhesive is already there. Now, if you don't want to use adhesive sheets or anything, then definitely you can use like liquid glue and just pop it in before you put in the little pieces of leaves. But this just makes it really nice and easy and quick. I don't have to worry about picking up the glue all the time, and it means I can just pop them in and I know that they are going to be stuck there permanently. I am trying to make sure that the colors aren't super next to each other, but I mean, a little bit is unavoidable, especially when I'm just using the 3 colors. But this is where you can kind of just go for gold. This process goes really quickly, and I really enjoy this part of die cut inlay, especially because these leaves are a little bit larger and they are not fussy at all. I'm not kind of fussing around with little pieces. So I obviously have sped this up a little bit. It does take a little bit of time, but no more than any other card techniques. So once I am here, I still have lots of exposed pieces of adhesive. Now, I could go through and fill these all up with the little pieces that I've already die cut, but my cheat that I often go with is this is when I will use some glitter. So I've got a little piece of the release paper from that stickered adhesive that I used, and I'm just using this to kind of smooth it in and shift the glitter into all of the gaps. So all of the exposed adhesive now has the glitter there. I'm going to shake off any excess, and then I'm going to use a little paintbrush, just a dry paintbrush, to get it all off the places that are already covered up, so it's not going to stick onto those. And then if you give it a really good press in, and all of your glitter is not going to move at all because the stickered adhesive is very strong and that is going to hold it in place. So this is a nice easy way to finish off your die cut inlay projects. Now, to finish off the actual card, I am going to add this same stamp set again. This is the Made For You one, and this is going to be the Grateful for Your Friendship, but I don't actually want that whole sentiment. I just want grateful for you, and at the moment it says for your friendship. So I'm going to separate the grateful and then the words down below. I'm going to stamp out the grateful on this little banner that I have in the VersaFine Onyx black ink, and then I'm just going to do some partial inking. So I'm covering up the R from the your. I didn't want to cut an R off the end of the word because I felt like I would still use these often, so it's easy enough for me to just add a little bit of mint tape over it, ink it up. Make sure you take off the mint tape before you stamp it down, and it looks perfect. No one could ever tell that it used to be a different sentiment. I popped these up on a little bit of foam tape, and then I'm going to pop this little banner on the front. I wanted to make the sentiment nice and small because I don't want to cover up all of that gorgeous background that we have created. So this is another 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base, and this is the completed card. That is all I have got time for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you have got some ideas. I will leave a link to this cover plate down in the description box below the video. I have no idea how many are available. This just felt like a really good price point to me in comparison to some of the other ones that I have seen available. They are really fun to play with, but as I said, price is often a barrier for me. So this was good to get my hands on this one and try lots of different techniques. If you have a favorite go-to technique for when you are using cover plates or background dies, then I would love to know them. Leave me a comment in the comment section down below on YouTube here, and I would love to hear about them and read. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!